Welcome, guys, back to the I Love Wrestling podcast. I'm your host, as always, Justin Woolwine. Today, we are welcomed with Mr. Jagger Lane. How we doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Of course, like I told you off camera, you've been a big supporter of the channel and on social media and other platforms. I don't know why I haven't asked you to do this sooner. So thank you for being patient with me and finally coming on.
No, everything happens for the right timing.
And with that said, I think it's kind of cool that I waited because I've just now started talking to guys down in the Colorado, Utah, New Mexico area. Like I just recorded yesterday with Marty the Moth. I've had Tommy Two Scoops, a couple other guys. So like I'm just now breaking into your area. So it's like
Nah,
a perfect time to start getting you guys in from that area and let the maybe Chicago area or the area around me know a little bit more about you guys.
I appreciate that.
Of course. Before we dive into your 20 plus year career, you want to shout out your social medias, maybe upcoming events that you got coming for us?
So I actually have a Facebook and it's under Jagger Lane. I also have an Instagram, which I'm mostly on all the time, and it's Jagger Lane as well. And then I got a YouTube video, a YouTube page, which is under Jagger Lane, but I need to update that. I'm horrible at social media.
It's all right. I'm learning. I'm learning. You'd think as a podcaster I'd have had that figured out, but nah, I just jumped in head first. Any upcoming events, maybe towards the beginning of
I
June?
actually have one on Friday. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it or not. And then I also am going to Washington as well for a show.
Okay,
So it's going to be pretty big.
gotcha, gotcha. Um, Seeing as we are the I Love Wrestling podcast, I try to start at the beginning of what made you fall in love with it. So my first question is just going to be simple, like when did you find wrestling, and what about it made you fall in love with it?
So I was watching it on TV, and my dad would just drag us in the living room nonstop. And he's like, "We're watching wrestling." And I was like, "We don't want to watch wrestling." And we wanted to watch cartoons. And so he would drag us in nonstop. And then I fell in love with it. It just struck. And at 7 years old, I turned around and I was like, I'm going to be a pro wrestler. And he turned around and goes, yeah, whatever, kid. This dream is never going to happen. And I'm sitting there watching um, Mr. Perfect. And I got hooked. And then I started watching Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and I was just stunned by like their appearance. And then Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, and I was just like, this is the coolest thing in the world. And so I would do everything. And then I got told, well, if you don't go to school, you don't do this, you know, you don't get to watch wrestling. And I was like, no. So I'd have to like go to the doctor and get shots just to get like the magazines that were coming out inside the store and get like wrestling action figures and do whatever. And I was like, I need this in my life. And I was stunned. So I fell in love with it. And when I turned 19, my dad found a pro wrestling school, and I was really in love with somebody back then. And I ended up getting hooked on drugs, and my whole life just went downhill. And he was taking me to rehab and paying everything. He actually sold his house and lost it, and then turned around and gave me the opportunity to get cleaned up with my trainer, Steve Gatorwolf and James Iona. And they paid for wrestling school where they would have me go get tested and everything like that constantly, make sure that I was staying clean. And from there, I just became a pro wrestler.
Okay.
Greatest experience ever when I was 19. The only downfall was I couldn't go into any bars when they had bar shows and hang out with the guys and everything like that. So it was a little different, but I got to learn.
Definitely, definitely. Before like I dive into your the wrestling aspect of that, Just who were some of like growing up, who were some of the biggest inspirations or some of those guys or girls that you were most fascinated with? I know you mentioned Mr. Perfect, but maybe who are some of the other guys that you just couldn't keep your eyes off of?
Um, Owen Hart,
Okay.
Pat Tanaka, um, Junkyard Dog,
Okay.
um, Davey Boy Smith, the one that gets not a lot of credit that should be up there on Ric Flair's top list and be one of the legends of all time, Ravishing Rick Rude.
Definitely. Definitely. I'm a big Rick Rude fan. I think just even if you just look at the character work that he did, not even taking in count the incredible just athlete he was inside the ring, especially like when you go watch things that he did outside of WWF or WCW and in Japan and stuff, like it's just crazy to see the ability he had, but character work, one of the best characters probably of all time. And you just see everybody like, and I don't want to say everybody, but just about everybody has a little Rick Rude in them if they're, that pretty boy heel. There's some ravishing Rick Rude there, and they can't deny it.
Well, not only him, but Owen Hart too. They both were side by side on everything because when they had Owen Hart in WWF, they had no idea what to do with all of his talent. He
No,
was so unbelievable that they had to change him to character just to try to keep him around.
I think he's one of those guys that like if you would have put him in a ring or in just like 15 years later, maybe he'd have been the biggest star in all of professional wrestling. Like he'd be, people would be talking about him the same way like I don't want to, like the same way we talk about Bryan Danielson or uh, CM Punk, or like that's just he'd be in that, like they put him in that category, which he deserves to be there. But I guess what I'm trying to say is the wider wrestling community would see it that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
But in this business, you have people that think that, those people shouldn't be there. But what they don't understand is anybody from a ref to guys in the back and setup crew to a wrestler, it doesn't matter who you are, ring announcer, bell keeper, they all should be tribute and they all should be appreciated. And that's a lot of things that a lot of promotions don't do and they need to do more of.
well, and with that said, like it's one of those things I've definitely learned from doing this podcast is just the amount of dedication and hard work that goes to just even to put in to do a podcast about wrestling. It takes just a lot. It takes a lot of your personal time, a lot of you, it takes a lot away from what's going on throughout your everyday life. And that sacrifice alone, and I'm sure it's tenfold for you guys, but like that sacrifice alone should be, um, you should get some credit for it, is what I'm trying to say.
I agree with you.
Um, if you don't mind us touching on it, I know you mentioned, you was battling addiction, and like that's something. Those stories always interest me just because my family's have had their issues and their problems. So I always like when those things come up, I just want to like ask, what was that recovery like for you? Just to maybe
It,
share that story and maybe be able to help somebody else.
it was brutal. I mean, I didn't want to get clean. I thought like life was what it was, but it was like temptation where I had no money, where I became homeless, where I was sleeping on the streets, sleeping in my car, trying to go to the grocery store and just stealing stuff to get out of, not dying.
Yeah.
But I made it through. And when I did, I learned that you got to appreciate life. You got to appreciate the people around you and know that there are people out there that love you and care about you. And no matter whatever it is you're struggling, you'll make it through. I've been clean and I'm happy. I won't even touch alcohol, cigarettes, any kind of drugs, no matter what it is. I don't want nothing. I can get hurt, and to the point where they'll be like, "Oh, we're gonna prescribe you pain pills," and I'm like, "No, don't even want that. Like, I'll suffer the pain no matter what." And I just feel like you should make a difference and know that there are people out there for you and that are willing to help you and know that they love you no matter what you're going through and they want to see you happy. So, whoever is struggling, just know that no matter what, you'll make it through. And there are people out there that love you and care about you and will do whatever they can to make sure that you're here so they can cherish the moments that they have with you on this world.
Definitely. And from what you said earlier, it seems like the one of the coolest parts about your recovery is it ended with you getting to do your dream and become a wrestler. How did what was that transition like going from, recovery and now okay, now I'm going from recovery to now training to do this thing that I watched on television as a child.
Like I said, it was brutal because I would go in there, I would want it. There'd be people around me, there'd be wrestlers around me that were doing it. And I was just stunned on where the temptation was. And I got told, well, if you do it, you're no longer here. And so I made sure that I stayed clean. I made sure that there was no temptations, nothing going in my way to make
So,
me lose something that I loved so much that I wanted to do.
yeah. Okay. And how did you like get connected with Johnny Attitude and Steve Gatorwolf? Sorry.
Okay, so Steve Gator Wolf, my dad was driving by and he would come and pick me up from my apartment and I would go do laundry. And he ended up driving by and he was like, "You won't believe there's a wrestling school." And I was like, "Okay, what are the stipulations?" And he's like, "You got to break up with this girl, you got to do this, you got to go get clean, you got to make sure this is happening." And I was like, "Deal." It was the greatest thing ever. I mean, it has opened up doors. It has done things for me like unnecessary. I've learned so many things to appreciate in life. I've learned so many things from different people. I've met so many different people, and it gave me the opportunity to meet my girlfriend, which is the mother of my children, and she's the one that actually told me about Johnny Green. That's where I'm going to lead into the story. And so she's the one that told me about Johnny Green. And I turned around and like, I got to find this guy. So I find him on social media and I'm like, there's no freaking way this guy's real on Facebook. Well, I message him. We turn around and chat. He sends me a number. I call the number. And from there, it led to, I need you to come down this way. So I went down there and I went to Reno, did the show with my little girl in the car and everything like that. And I set up, I hung out with them and everything and paid my dues to show them that I wanted to learn. And then from there, I went home. A week later, he calls me up and goes, "You want to come to Florida?" And I was like, there's no freaking way. So for 4.5 years, I worked with Hulk Hogan Micro Championship Wrestling. And it was the greatest experience of my life because I got to learn from so many people that were there, so many midgets, so many talented legends that were back and forth in the building and around. Just being in the car with Johnny, learning stories and getting told what to do, what not to do. Make sure that you're always being respectful and knowing that you got to appreciate anything that comes your way, whether it's a no, and that no is going to be there for a reason. And they're like, you'll end up getting a yes, and that yes is going to be even bigger than that no was. And I was like, there's no possible way. And so when I learned that, it opened up even more big doors for me.
Definitely. What's the biggest difference in working in a micro league as compared to a normal, professional wrestling federation?
There's really, okay, so there's really no difference because besides a couple of things. One, the talent is not like normal talent because of their size.
Mhm.
And then two, the rings are a little bit different built because some of them are 8 by 8, some of them are 10 by 10s, and some of them are 12 by 12. So it's being in the ring and learning your ring position and knowing your ring awareness is going to help you be in any size platform of rings. So that's the difference of just a show from them to a show compared to any other promotion, and who's actually putting on the show, how the promoter's running the show, if they're going to do, the whole lights and all the flashy other stuff or not do it. So it just depends on the promotion. But as for that, it's mostly the ring and, you know, learning your ring awareness.
If you could shout out a couple of those guys that you worked with during that time, who are some of the guys maybe I should go and try to get on the podcast?
So there's a guy named, I don't know his real name. He goes by Philip. I don't know if it's real or not, but he played Minnie Batista, and he was also called Little Nasty Boy,
Okay.
a really good friend of mine. And then there's Jacob, which is the Brooks brothers, and he plays Little Show. And then there's his brother, which is Baby Jesus. And then there's a female named Pinky Shortcake. There's another one named Psycho, Short Sleeve Samson. So yeah,
Okay, okay. I have to go down the list and see if I can get them on it. I've never had somebody from that aspect of professional wrestling on here, so that'll be different and something maybe I can try to dive into deeper. Um, what was maybe
you'll learn a lot more about them than it'll be unreal.
okay? What was like if you had to pick one, what was your favorite time in that 4 year period, 4.5 year period?
What do you mean by pick one?
Like if you had to pick one moment, sorry, one moment that stands out the most.
I would say the learning experience, just cruising with the guys and being with them and learning the way of the business, how they were trained, how they weren't trained, how some of them got taught on the road, how some of them just got picked up, how they just got thrown into a show, how the bump was different from the US, from Mexico, and how you're supposed to train this way and not train that way, and things like that.
Okay. Is that where you met Pat Tanaka?
Pat Tanaka I met when I was doing Hulk Hogan's Micro Championship Wrestling, and then he ended up leaving. And after that, he ended up going to Extreme Midget Wrestling Federation. And from there, he drove, I don't remember if he was in California or Ohio or wherever. He drove all the way to Utah, picked me up, and took me on the road. And I got to learn different stories from him.
Was would you consider him like somebody that kind of just took you under your wing and kind of ran with it?
I believe so. He loved me. Like he taught me different ways about the business, just like how to appreciate it, what to expect from it. And he would always play this joke on us where he was always like putting us through these duck walks and playing pranks on us and everything like that. So me and a bunch of midgets turned around and went inside the McDonald's, and they're like, okay, well, what's going to happen here? And I was like, whatever this guy orders, put it in a Happy Meal. And we paid the cashier to put whatever Pat Tanaka wanted in a Happy Meal box.
That's
And
funny.
he got so mad.
That's great. That's great. Um, did you ever, working for Hogan's uh micro league, did you get to ever have any experiences with Hogan?
I did. I
Okay.
had a lot of them, and they were unbelievable. I even got to wrestle at Comic Con, and I had no idea when I was leaving Hulk Hogan's Micro Championship Wrestling that he was going to be there. And when I got back, a lot of the workers were like, Hulk Hogan's going to be there. And I was like, say what? And they're like, no, Jagger, you don't know Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan doesn't know you. Jimmy Hart was there and everything like that. And I just got done off the road with them. And I had all these indie guys telling me that, you know, what I was saying was not real and everything like that. So they're like, you got to go introduce me to Hogan, or I'm going to go to Hogan and go ask him. And they went to Hogan. Hogan was like, what up, Jagger? And then Jimmy Hart was like, what up, Jagger, baby? And now all these indie guys turn around and they're like, there is no freaking way Hulk Hogan knows you. And they were blown away. So anytime that Hogan had to go to the restroom, he would drive by where we were and he would be like, what up, Jag? Just to pay respect to me and let the guys know, treat this guy good. He knows who I am.
Okay.
And it opened a lot of respect and a lot of doors for me because back then they were just like, oh, this kid, he's just going to hop in the ring. He's a nobody. Why do we want him? Because back in the day, no matter where you were, it was hard. Nobody wanted to let you win. And you could not get the opportunity to go to a pro wrestling school and say, hey, I want to join. Because it was a hard way to break into the business back then, where it was like people wouldn't even want you in there because you were going to steal their spot. And they didn't want you on the show because they didn't want to not be on the show.
I know you just mentioned it, like the difficulties of trying to break out in the indie scene, especially in your area, which is something I've heard a couple times from other guys that I've talked to in the area. What do you think is the contributor to you being able to get out of that bubble and be able to travel and make a name for yourself?
So, pretty much making friendship with everybody and letting other workers work with you and learn your ability and also help other workers around you if they're in a struggle or anything's going on. Like, as long as you can communicate with these other workers, it's going to make you branch out and stand out when they're going to talk about you, or they're going to be like, why was that guy on that call when he shouldn't even be here? It's going to open more doors for you if you take the opportunity of learning the little things like we were talking about off the air, learning the little things no matter what it is about the business, whether it's listening to a podcast and learning from other different workers, or it's being at a show and learning from the ring guy, the announcer, the talent, no matter who it is, as long as you keep on paying attention to the one thing they teach you in pro wrestling, is you'll never stop learning and take that opportunity and just keep on asking questions. It'll open a new door for you. It'll give you opportunities that you will not even expect.
Okay. Speaking of opportunities, how did you get the opportunity to start working with Rocky Mountain Pro?
Um, I don't work for Rocky Mountain Pro.
No, did I? I might have read that somewhere else. You know what? The internet can be wrong sometimes. I apologize. I'll go into the next question. You have been EPW heavyweight champion, correct?
Correct.
Okay, maybe that source is right. The internet's a wonderful thing. Um,
I've got asked to work for different promotions, trust me, like them, but I've never heard back from the promoter after they send you a message or something.
okay.
So, I mean, there's opportunities out there for everyone. Like we were talking about, you're always going to hear no, but you're eventually going to hear yes.
Yeah.
And it's going to be for the best opportunity of whatever it is.
How did you start working with EPW, and what was that experience like being able to, wave the flag and become heavyweight champion?
So a buddy of mine opened up the promotion and we started working there and we just do little shows because like a lot of the promotions here would like shut down, open,
Yeah.
and there was new ones all the time. So I got asked if I could train some people and I started training them better than what the other trainer was learning from. And I mean, like when people do drills, they want to like beat the guy down to the point where they never come back.
Mhm.
And I got taught is if as long as you run over the same drill like twice and then run over some more and give them the opportunity where they feel like they're working a match when they're at training or learning more stuff than what the outcome is, then they'll come back. They'll want more. But as long as you're going to keep on going clothesline after clothesline, drop kick after drop kick, and never learn a new move, you're never going to see that person again, or they're never going to want to come to training again because they're going to get tired and bored out of it. So there was one night they turned around and they're like, "We're going to turn around and make you champ." And I was like, "Awesome." But I mean, having a belt doesn't mean nothing. It's just a replica and it's just a prop for any promotion out there. Because if I go to Rocky Mountain Pro, like you were talking, there's a champion there. If we come to Utah, there's a champion here. But I mean, no matter how many promotions there are out there, there's a champion for every single one of them. And it's like, oh, well, I'm the Utah champion. And then they're going to be like, well, I'm the Colorado champion. And it's like, these people ain't going to care. So you want to change the value of that and have that belt mean something instead of being a prop. Because at the end of the day, that belt is just a prop and it's not going to mean nothing.
Do you find it, I don't want to say difficult, but like challenge, do you accept that challenge and say, hey, when I win this championship, now it's my goal to make it actually mean something rather than just be that prop?
So when I won the belt, I wanted to give every opportunity to the people that didn't have the opportunity, that they would push to the side and not let. Because I remember when I was coming up, they didn't want to let me in and get that opportunity. So being a champion or being a great worker and learning so much and being experienced for 24 years, I'm actually getting the opportunity to pick who I want to work at the shows now. And it's pretty fun because I learned that I can pick a guy that's green and go over something with him and teach him something new where he'll have the experience and feel comfortable because then if they cluster, then it's not really a bad thing because anything that you do, all it is you're learning. And nobody's going to remember it. They're going to remember that moment until the next show comes or the next event happens or anything like that. And I learned that from Austin Aries. And the crazy thing is, like, you can work everywhere, but it's not going to mean anything until WWE or AEW or AAA or TNA or, New Japan picks you up or any other big company out there that has TV that's going to keep on going.
You've got to do, you mentioned AAA. You've got to do some lucha libre stuff. What's the biggest difference in working the lucha libre style as opposed to like a traditional American style?
So, American guys, a lot of them are light and they work different ways, but working lucha libre, it is a new experience. I mean, A punch is a punch. I mean, it's stiff, and those guys work stiff. But I wouldn't change that for the life of me. I have a blast with the Lucha guys, whether I'm wearing their mask or not wearing a mask, because with one promotion, it's just nothing but masked wrestlers. So they ended up going out and they're like, we're going to change your character. And I was like, you're not going to change who I am, because for 24 years, people have known who I am. I was like, I'll wear a mask, but I'm only wearing a mask for you and nobody else. And so we made that agreement and everything like that. And I go out there and I learned a different experience from them. They're the way they work, the way they run ropes, the way it's all flips, the way it's arm drags, how they pause, and how everything's a comedian point where they're doing a lot of comedy spots and a lot of pauses. It's not like a normal match, and they go faster instead of slower, because a lot of lucha guys don't sell, but the American guys absolutely sell.
Yeah.
And you'll learn that when you're watching it, because it's a lot of it's a lot more quicker motion and a lot more high flying. But when you actually get to work with them, it's a little bit different, because they know that they don't have the experience of an American worker. So they want to learn from you as well. And I've been taught that, which was unbelievable to know.
Yeah, I think like one of the coolest things I know you mentioned a little bit like about Lucha is that they'll do that fast-paced stuff, and then there's the pauses, and like how I feel like when I watch it is they do all that, and then they give you the time to soak it in by doing a comedy or a relief spot, and then they'll go back and do it, and then they'll give you another spot. So like the cool part I guess about Lucha is the pacing. Like the pacing is just so much different. So like I think one of the biggest like examples is like a couple years ago, my step siblings, we took them to a Lucha Libre event. Like it was out on our ranch, and it's just different. They didn't watch wrestling before that. Like me and my brothers and my dad, we watch wrestling all the time, but my step siblings didn't. And we go and they buy all the masks, and they're really interested about what this is because it's different. And I remember at the end of it, like they watched the whole thing, couldn't take their eyes off of it, just laser focused. And I just think it was the style because like you watch a more American traditional, it's slower, there's not as much going on, but with Lucha, there's always something happening. And whenever they pause or whenever they take a minute, that's when you're like, okay, I get to soak in everything that just happened, and then they're, balls to the walls back at it again. And at the end, I remember my step siblings just being like, now every show we go to, where's the Lucha guys? Is there going to be a Lucha match? So it's just one of those things that's so different that it attracts a completely different audience. Like Lucha might be the one thing if you're not a wrestling fan maybe you should watch Lucha and maybe it'll change your opinion and then you'll want to watch other things. I guess is I went the long road, but that's where I was getting.
No, that or everybody telling you, oh, Nacho Libre. And you're like, no.
No, it's not the same thing at all. It's completely different.
Because I
But
mean, I got to work a show with Silver King before he passed away and went to London.
okay.
And the experience with him and working with him was amazing. He he taught me so many things that was unreal, and I was blown away. And he was like, "Yeah, we're ready to go film Nacho Libre 2, and we're gonna be doing this soon." And I'm like, "No way, this is so cool." So just learning from that guy was unreal.
Did you ever get to travel down to Mexico and work down there?
I did once,
Okay.
and I did a AAA thing years ago with Charlie Madsen, the Latin Lover, Barrio Boy, and I think it was Psychosis. I have a picture of it. And it was years ago. It was for an opportunity that I got asked to do. And I thought that opportunity would never happen. But when the opportunity came up to go again, there was some stipulations to it. And that's on the conversation that we were talking about earlier and off the air. Um, so I don't know if you want me to bring that up or not,
Yeah,
but that
yeah,
is up to you.
yeah.
Okay, so I got asked if I would shower with a couple other guys and they would take me to Mexico again and everything like that. I said no, and the next day we had a show and they told the promoter the show after that I didn't want to like participate with them and hang out and everything like that. So the promoter decided, well, I'm going to send you home. And he sent me home that night and I didn't work that show the next day, but the show before I did. And it's because I didn't take the opportunity to go shower with these guys when they're giving me an opportunity to go do what they felt that needed to be done. And I was like, I didn't know what was going to happen. I don't know if they were goofing around or whatever, but I mean, like, I would never take that opportunity. And I don't want that opportunity to be pushed on me or to any other workers. Something that most people don't understand. Back in the day, there was a thing called the big push. A lot of people don't know what the big push is. And now it's like most people turn around and they're like, man, that guy sucks. How did he get the opportunity to be on TV? Or that guy sucks. How does he get the opportunity to be booked here? And what most people don't understand is that a lot of the promoters and a lot of the workers are actually pretty much trying to convince you to sleep with them or suck their dick or do things with them to pretty much go places. And I didn't want to fall for that and I would never do it. I mean, I was born Catholic and Mormon and Catholic again, and I learned straight out. And I didn't want to stoop down to their level just to go anywhere. So I was like, I'm going to make myself where I am. And when I was on the road with like Pat and Johnny and, you know, everybody else, I would learn stories where they would tell me this is what would happen in locker rooms or this is what would happen if you didn't do this. And I was like, it's not right because you're here to work in this business. You're not here to do anything else. It's about the fans that created who you are. Because if it wasn't for the fans, you wouldn't have a podcast. I wouldn't be on this show, and anybody else wouldn't be known in this world as a wrestler or a worker. Because what the people don't understand is, I mean, what the wrestlers don't understand is you made who you are, but the fans made you.
Yeah. Yeah. Do do you think, how do I want to put this? Um, Avoiding the exploitation. Do you think that was something that like more people should be aware of and more people should do to try to make it and try to push those things out?
I think anybody that feels comfortable to explain situations and let other people know,
Mhm.
it will open up bigger doors for them so they can realize that their talent is more out there and the people will appreciate who you are for who you are,
Yeah,
not what you have to do to be there.
makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing. Um,
You're welcome.
because like I've honestly never heard any like you watch like Dark Side of the Ring and things like that. You hear about those things, but never on my like on this show. I don't want to say my show because that sounds a little conceited, but never on this show have I had a story like that. So it's interesting. It's a different side of wrestling that I haven't yet come across, if that makes sense. And like I said, thank you for sharing and letting just people know like you don't have to take that opportunity because I mean, granted, you might not have got to work that show, but if that's what it takes to work that show, Do you really want to work at that show or for that promotion or with those guys? And I think that's the thing that should be important is if that's what it takes, you probably shouldn't be there because you're just feeding into the hazing or the bullying or the exploitation. And that's, I mean, it's just not right on a human level to have to go through that
Not only
to
that,
further.
is if you even attempt to do that stuff, are you actually guaranteed that they're going to keep their word
Yeah.
to take you to where they say they are? Because a
Or are they
lot of
just going to
people,
use you?
yeah, a lot of people won't keep their word. And that's another thing, that they'll tell you to do these things and then you never go where they promised you. They never open those doors for you.
Um, something, earlier that we was talking about to get on a more positive note, I should say, is you was talking about training guys. Something now in your career, you've done it for, like I said earlier, 20 plus years. Now, at this portion of your career, do you enjoy, you know, letting people know and teaching the younger talent, the younger crop of talent? Is that something that maybe like going forward, you plan on trying to do more?
So I love teaching people and I love letting people ask me for advice. I've sat in the crowd where I was at a show and then a few other shows where they would be like, "Oh, there's a worker out in the crowd tonight." And indie guys would come up to me and ask me for advice and how their match went and everything like that. And I would have the promoter ask me to be booked on the show and to go get my gear. I would make sure that I wouldn't bring my gear because I didn't want to work the show. I wanted to enjoy the show and turn around and teach these guys that what they're doing means more, and to pay attention to the audience. That's another thing too, is if the audience is bored, change it up. If
Mm.
the audience wants something new, change it up. Give the audience what they want, because that's going to make you become a bigger star. It's going to make you who you are. And that's another thing in training that they don't pay attention to, is learning from the audience, hearing what the audience wants. Because the moment that one person goes over and you get that one person hooked, the rest of the audience goes around and it feeds in.
You brought up going to the shows and then, not purposely not bringing your clothes so you can just sit there, be a fan, watch and maybe help the other guys that are in the crowd. Do you think that's also something that's important as a wrestler to still be able to sit back and enjoy a product and to learn from a product?
It gives you a couple of reasons. One, it'll give you that temptation that you want to get back in the ring, that you have that itch. If you have that desire to quit or anything like that, or any of the moments going down on the road where you're just like, I'm done, I don't want to do this, it gives you that itch. But it also gives you that opportunity to let the promoter know that you're interested in him, to give him the opportunity that he's going to be like, oh, this guy's here and he doesn't want to work my show. Not that he's better than me, not that he thinks that I can have him anytime. It shows the promoter that you're interested in their product and you want to work with them in the near future, or the promoter will come out and reach out to you and give you the opportunity to work for him.
Okay.
And that moment, a lot of these indie guys do not learn from. And I learned that a long time ago from James Iona. I mean, he was trained by Dwayne The Rock Johnson and everything like that. But I learned that from James. And that moment I learned that, it opened a new thing for me, because he would tell me when he was in WWF and WCW how he would always sit in the crowd and just feed into it, just enjoy it, knowing that the other workers, knowing that you appreciate the other workers, knowing that you appreciate their talent being there, knowing that you appreciate all the hard work that they're doing in their match and everything like that. Because a lot of the guys now are like, oh, that was a great match. But a lot of them are like, that was a crappy match. Like, why are you even doing this? Like, that was a joke. You messed up. And if you get people the feedback, they'll learn. And that's one thing that most people don't want to do is sit there and learn. If you get down and you get the opportunity to watch the show, enjoy the other people that you're working with because you have no idea that you're going to be working that guy next week, next month, 2 weeks, a year from now. Watch him. Then you'll be ready for when you're getting that opportunity to move up, whether he's champion, whether he's not champion, whether it's going to open a big door for you the next day afterwards. Work with him, study him.
Something like the reason I found that like most interesting is like going to indie shows out here in my area, like even as a podcaster, something I've noticed is the other podcasters or um, reporters or journalists, whatever you want to say, in the room, they don't necessarily sit down and watch the show. They are more interested in going and talking to everybody and like I understand networking, but like a lot of the guys who are sitting in the crowd, like wrestlers and the girls, they're there to enjoy the show too, whether they work the card already or they're going to come out, they're trying to enjoy it too. And like, so part of me always just gets like frustrated watching other guys go bug or Berard these, the talent as they're just trying to enjoy the show themselves. When, I mean, afterwards, the talent's walking around talking to fans and talking to us podcasters and stuff, anyways. It's like, I've just always found it like more respectful to sit down, enjoy the show, soak it in, and then at the end or at the beginning try to network. And like that's why it was really interesting to me that you was like, yeah, sometimes I'll go to a show and I'll just try to soak it in and I'll just try to, give that promoter the opportunity to try to bring me in or give the talent the opportunity to try to talk to me and pick my brain. Like it's just a different way of interpreting or going at the wrestling business that honestly I haven't heard yet. So it really just because that I guess I try to do that naturally. So it's cool to see somebody that maybe thinks that way on that side of the guardrail, if that makes sense.
Like I said, I learned the right way. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't know. And it's crazy because if you learn the right way, you're going to soak that in. And like I said, listening to podcast over and over again, you're going to learn from different people and what they went through and experienced. So it's going to teach you the right way.
And I think like the coolest thing about like for instance podcasting is just getting to know all these stories and getting to learn, the right ways and the wrong ways and seeing because from my perspective it's one of those where I can take in all this knowledge and I can see, well, this worked for this person, this didn't work for that person, and then pick it apart to carve my own path or to maybe even help guide other people's paths because I've messaged people or had people messaging me saying, "Hey, I saw you had this guy on. Is there anything that they might have said that maybe I need to pay attention to or things like that?" So like I've just the cool thing about podcasting is I've been able to turn it into a tool and to use it to learn and soak in knowledge about wrestling that's beyond what's on the mat, if that makes sense.
One thing I've learned is whether people like you or don't like you, they're always going to pay attention to you. And there was a couple of podcasts that I did where this guy turned around and goes, "Man, my podcast just blow up on that interview that you just did with me because people were listening to it and they're like, what the? This guy said what?" And another guy was like, "Dude, can I have you back on?" And I was like, "Soak it in, let it sit for a while, hit me up in 3 months, 4 months, let's tease the audience, and then we bring me back and we'll go from there."
All
And
right.
he's like, "Say what?" I was like, "Yeah, it's just like a match, bro." I was like, "If we do that, then you'll get more views, then you'll get more things. And they're like, whoever taught you the right way. And I was like, thank
And with that, that's something I've learned because I've talked to guys, and like there's sometimes I've been very anxious to get somebody back on because it was a great conversation. I'm like, look, I want to do another one, and that's what I've been told. Hey, just let it. Let's wait. Like, or like they're like, hey, I know this big thing's gonna happen here. Let's do it after. Or, I know it did really good now. Let's let it, once it starts to die down, we'll jump back on it and we'll do it again. So you capitalize off of it instead of just doing back to back to back. And it's something like I've only had a couple guests on multiple times. And usually it was like to promote something. Like, hey, we did the one, and then a couple months later it was like, okay, now I have this big match, let's promote it. And so like finding ways to do that is just something, I guess, in this short journey I've had so far that I'm learning and figuring out how to utilize the right way, if that makes sense.
you. No, it does. It's just like the topic that we're talking about. You never stop learning, bro. No matter what it is you're doing, the guys don't understand that secret. The biggest thing in a pro wrestling ring to learn is never stop learning. No matter where you're at, you continue to learn.
So, something that I always find really interesting to ask is I know, like earlier in the conversation, we talked about some of your big inspirations. Another thing that always I find interesting is what your dream match is. If you haven't had it yet, who's maybe that one guy that you'd like to get in the ring with before you hang up the boots?
Man, that's emotional. And trust me, like if I would ever have the opportunity, I I would love to. But I know that it'll never happen because the guy is no longer here on this earth. God rest his soul. But if I had the opportunity to ever work with anybody, it would be Owen Hart and Kurt Hennig, the two biggest talents that inspire me by their agility, by their ring awareness, everything that they did. I mean, Ravishing Rick Rude, amazing worker, amazing talent, and everything like that. But if you ever study Mr. Perfect, he always was on pinpoint where he was supposed to be. If you ever study Owen Hart, he was always on point, no matter what kind of match he was put against. He always had the perfect moment to make that match solid, whether it was a guy that had no experience to a guy that had experience. Same goes with Mr. Perfect. They both had the skills to teach you the right way.
I got two more questions and then I'll let you go. I was looking through your social media when I was doing research and looking up things about you, and I saw about, I want to say 2021, 2022, you got to have a tryout with Impact Wrestling, if I believe that's correct.
So I got to have a tryout, which was the same topic like we were talking about earlier, where, promoters don't give you the respect because they think that talent is better than other talent or not talented enough to get that opportunity back in the day. But now that opportunity pops up for any worker because any worker gets the privilege now, which is it's great. But being in that opportunity to try out was unbelievable. The experience that I got to learn just being there and then getting the opportunity to be in security for Brian Cage and John Morrison. And I've known John Morrison for quite a while, but just being there was unreal. I mean, it was a new aspect. You learned how they produced everything and how they ran everything over, how They did meetings over and over again every single day on how they were going to run the card, how they would use the little things around them to make it the biggest show ever and make it an illusion. I learned things from guys that I was blown away. I seen guys that had masks that weren't wearing their mask, and I was like, "You're wow, you don't even look like that guy." And I would hear stories, and I would see those guys, and you would think that they all hated each other, and just because they're going to go out there and battle each other, and you would see that they're the greatest friends, just chit chatting on where they're going to go play golf or how they're going to go swimming or all these other things, and you're just like, "Oh, it's the same as the Indies. Just you're on TV.
Same concept applies.
Yeah, just you're on TV and you're getting paid more."
Yeah. Um,
So you learn those things and you appreciate it a lot differently. And it's just being in that ring, being in a TNA ring, I never thought would ever happen. I mean, that opportunity means the world to me. Even when I got a tryout for Gabe Sapolsky, I think I pronounced his name correct. If not, I apologize. Um, Even when I got to try out for him for WWE, it was one of the greatest experiences knowing that he knew me by my first name instead of by a number. And
yeah.
he was like, "Your number, da 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 da, and your number, da 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 da." And everybody was like, "Jag, just remember your number 19." And I was like, "Okay." And then I walk up and Gabe's like, "Jagger, how do I know you?" And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, "No, I know you." And I was like, I have no idea, sir." And he turns around and goes, "Did you ever do this?" And I was like, "No, I did this. And I was here and I was that with these people and I did this with these people." And he's like, "It's probably where I know you from." So it was a good thing that he knew me by name and he was calling me by name instead of a number. And it must have been that I made an impact because he told me the same thing that everybody else has told me. You're very talented. Everything that you do is crisp. You're solid point on everything. You know how to work a match. You know how to tell a story. But the one thing that I battle is always being in shape. So, I mean, I'm working on that even more, but it's hard.
Yeah. Especially being on the road and trying to balance, your dates, your personal life, and just everything. Like adding that just makes it tough. And not always does the body want to work with you, if that makes sense. Like that's probably the most like even me, like I've tried to gain weight or I try to get bigger because I'm like 100 pounds soaking wet. And like I'd like to wrestle, but I'm not gonna do it at 100 pounds. Like it's just not who's believably gonna bump for me. It's not gonna happen. I'm gonna have to gain some weight. I just trying to figure out how to gain that weight's the hard part. So I get it. I understand. What would you say are your biggest goals for the rest of the year? Like we're about halfway through 2025, so about 7 more months. What do you want to achieve by the end of 2025?
I can't predict the future, so I can't tell you what's going to happen and what's not going to happen. Tomorrow could be my last match or not be my last match, and I would have more of a future ever. My biggest goal is to make sure that my son with a lifetime terminal disease is always healthy and taken care of, like my daughter, and make sure that she's well taken care of. That's my goal. That's my dream and everything like that. As for the pro wrestling world, I never know what's going to happen because in this business, tomorrow could be no tomorrow. we have so many opportunities with so many workers and so many people around us and so many great interviews and everything that we learn from. But I mean, the one thing that I've learned is, and I always say learn in this interview or anything else, is you never stop learning and tomorrow is never promised. Because at any moment, just coming home just a while ago when I was driving here back home and we are gonna hop on this interview, I almost hydroplaned it. And I mean, I got here safely to do this interview with you, and I appreciate you taking the time to give me this interview time and give me the opportunity to be on your show. I really appreciate it, and I can't thank you enough. And I can't thank the Lord enough to give us the opportunity to make that happen. But like I said, my biggest goal is to see what the future holds for me because I can't guarantee what it's going to hold for me. I could tell you that I want to be here, but how do I know I'm not going to be injured or my last day was this last interview or who knows? So my biggest goal is enjoy the ride, enjoy the moment, enjoy everything that you have because tomorrow is never guaranteed.
I like that. I can't ask for a better answer, honestly. Though, I just want to, I want to say thank you. I know I've said it a couple times, but thank you for joining us. Thank you for being patient, and thank you for an incredible interview. And I, excuse me, I leave the door open. If y'all want to come up part two, three, four, whatever, I'd love to have you. Just thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for this learning experience. And I'm looking forward to doing it again.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me on. Thank you for everything. Thank you for taking the time, the day, and everything that you had busy because I know you were getting home as well. And I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. I would love to come back on your show whenever, but let's let it soak in and let's learn from the next worker or wrestler that's going to be on your show, whoever they may be. Let's give them the opportunity and let's give them a shout out too and let them like know that we appreciate them, man.
100%. 100%. If I knew who was going to be on next, I'd shout out, but I don't. uh, it's just this week's been crazy with scheduling. If you want me to be honest, I had like five interviews planned. I've only done two. So it's the wrestling world for you. It's just you never know what's going to expect. If I knew who was going to come on next, I had some ideas, but you just never know. So I don't. When it's time, I'll definitely let them know.
Awesome, man.
But I will just leave this off for see you next time.
Thank you.